It's been several months since you've been cheated on, maybe even several years, and you're still replaying conversations in your head, unable to move on no matter what you try. If that's you, I'm going to show you how you can move on after betrayal, not in years, but starting right now. In my one-on-one work, I've helped hundreds of people break free. This video is a short encapsulation of some of the consistent themes that come up in my sessions. So we'll talk about, first, why your brain refuses to let go. Second, specific mental shifts that actually work. And third, practical actions you can take today. And at the end, we'll talk about a couple of specific signs that tell you that you've actually moved on. And this is something most people don't talk about. And here's why this matters. Moving on after betrayal isn't actually about getting over the person who cheated. It's about recovering from the reality that you thought that you were living in. So people try to force themselves to stop caring. They expect linear progress. They see their unfaithful partner moving on super quickly and think that somehow equals strength. So the first step is you need to accept what I call the reality gap. When someone cheats, especially repeatedly, what breaks isn't just trust in that person. What breaks is your entire understanding of what's happening. You thought you were in story A, and suddenly you discover you've been in story B the entire time. What you need to do is acknowledge that the relationship you thought you had never actually existed in the first place. Stop trying to reconcile all the contradictions and just accept that you were duped. You were deceived. Because what's going on, part of why your brain keeps going back, replaying old conversations, is because it's trying to make sense of it. It's trying to make contradictory facts fit together. They said they loved you, and they betrayed you. Some moments felt good, and the relationship isn't what you thought it was. Your mind keeps trying to run loops to resolve this. Because in a lot of ways, your brain will keep on working on problems that you tell it are important until you tell it to stop. And if you give it an impossible task to somehow try to reconcile two things that are irreconcilable, it will just keep going forever and ever and ever. It's not ever going to make these things fit together because they just don't. So you have to let go of the lie that the relationship that you thought you had was real. It just wasn't. This can be especially hard if you are trying to reconcile with a person. Trying to reconcile with someone and simultaneously saying, the relationship I thought I had was a farce, is very difficult. Because why would you want to reconcile with them? And that's a good question to ask yourself. And if you find a good answer, feel free to pursue that. But for a lot of people, there really isn't a good answer. And so if this is something you struggle with, I recommend getting out a piece of paper and writing down kind of both story A and story B side by side in two columns. They loved me, they betrayed me, etc. Just kind of go down the list and let your brain actually look at it and recognize once and for all, these aren't reconcilable. Which one is actually true? And you'll realize that they did choose to betray you, to hurt you, to end things. Step 2, you need to understand your brain's loop. So let's say you do this, you start to let go of the idea that both of them have to be true. You might still find yourself habitually going back. And what's really interesting is when you're in those moments, you want to move on so badly that you start to fight the thoughts. Instead, learn how to observe them without judgment. When you catch yourself replaying that conversation for the 100th time, simply notice it. I'm thinking about this again. This works because fighting the thoughts directly gives them power. The moment you say, I need to stop thinking about this, you're actually reinforcing the thought further. But when you observe it neutrally, like watching a cloud pass, watching a leaf in a river float by, it naturally loses its grip. And so my tip here is that after you do the paper exercise to help you realize these aren't actually reconcilable, if it starts to come up again, just say it out loud. I'm thinking about this again. Then physically redirect your attention to something in your present reality. After you kind of observe it, let it pass, go do something else. And then the third step is to just begin shifting your attention patterns over time. Because moving on isn't about forcing yourself to stop caring or to feel differently. It's about gradually shifting where your attention naturally goes. So first, you notice your thought patterns without judgment. We just covered that. Then gently redirect your attention. But here's the key. Redirect it towards something specific. Create a clear picture of what you actually want. Not just someone who won't cheat, but what does a genuinely healthy relationship look and feel like for you? Make it specific. What does respect look like? What does real intimacy look like? What kind of communication do you want? But then even broader than that, even more specific to you than that, what type of life do you want? And how can you begin redirecting your attention to building the life that you actually want, that you actually deserve? This works because your brain needs somewhere to go. If you just tell it stop thinking about the betrayal, it has nowhere else to focus. But when you give it a clear, compelling vision of what you're building toward, it at least has a direction, at least has an option, it at least has choice. So the tip here is to either somewhere on your phone that you could make the background, or on a sticky note, or in a journal, write down a vision for what you want in your life, and then make sure that you have either the full version or a short version somewhere that you can see it regularly to remind yourself that this is what you're working toward. So that when you do recognize, you catch yourself in the moment of replaying old events, rehashing old conversations, you have something that you can go toward. Because if you don't have anything, your brain's going to get bored and just go back to those old thought loops. And if you can attach some type of physical activity to this, even better. Because if you're doing something with your body, it's easier to get engrossed into that instead of just meditating on your future life. So that might be going for a walk, journaling for 5 minutes, calling a friend, cleaning your kitchen, doing 10 push-ups. And especially if you can attach this to your vision of, I want to get in better shape. Then when you notice the ruminations coming back, shifting your attention after letting it pass, doing 10 push-ups, it just creates a nice, clean through line from where you have been to where you want to go. You're teaching your brain that those thought patterns lead to movement, not to endless loops. And you're actually creating new neural pathways. Your brain will actually start the physical action sooner and sooner in the thought pattern. And eventually the spiral barely even gets started before you're already in motion. And so if you want more practical advice, make a list of spiral breaker activities right now, where when you notice yourself to start spiraling, these are a couple of things that you can do to just get you moving toward the direction of your vision. So let me show you what this might look like in real time. I'm sitting here. Suddenly I notice I'm replaying this conversation again. Oh, and I've been replaying it for 5 minutes. Okay, I'm doing that. I'm not judging it. I didn't say, damn it, why am I still thinking about this? I should be over this by now. No, I just notice it. Then stand up, move, maybe go to another room, maybe call a friend, maybe pick up a book, and remembering whatever my vision is. I'm doing those things, those spiral breakers, because they're attached to a better vision, a bigger vision of what I want in my life. And again, the moment that you try to fight it, the moment that you sit there and grit your teeth, try to force yourself to stop thinking about it, you're giving it more power. Movement breaks the spell. Now let's talk about 2 challenges that people tend to face when it comes to this. First, their partner that cheated is already with someone new and they seem happy. This feels devastating because it feels like proof that what you shared didn't matter, and it makes them seem stronger than you. But most likely they're actually just avoiding. They're filling the space with someone new so they don't have to sit with what they did or who they are. And they're doing these things so that they don't even have to dig deeper and recognize what internal problems they were facing that led them to the affair in the first place. Their speed is not strength. It's avoidance and it's escape. And your pain isn't weakness. It shows that you feel deeply, that you value things, that you have empathy. You're doing the harder work than they are of actually feeling what you need to feel and rebuilding yourself. Another challenge people face is that some days you'll feel fine, and then something small triggers a wave of hurt or anger, and you think, oh my God, I'm going backwards. This will never end. And just remember that with anything, progress will come with some pain. It won't be easy. Again, don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying that this should send you all the way back to ground zero. But anything that you do will feel easier and harder day to day. That is just normal for any progress that you make. It's just part of being a human, unfortunately. And so how will you know that you've actually moved on? You'll know you've genuinely moved on when you stop needing them to be different for you to be okay. You'll know you moved on when you stop needing answers from them for you to be okay. When you stop replaying different hypothetical conversations in your head, trying to get some insight out of them. And it's not necessarily that you stop caring entirely. That's not the goal. But when their choices, their opinions of you, their assessment of the relationship, when that isn't what defines your reality, When you are the one who defines your reality, that's how you know you've moved on. You stop measuring your worth by their choices. You stop needing to understand why they did it. You begin building a life that doesn't revolve around recovering from what they did, but around creating what you actually want. When you start implementing these steps, here's what happens. Your thoughts gradually lose their power. Your attention naturally shifts. You start investing in your present and future instead of just dissecting your path. I was working with a client just the other week. She went from checking her ex's social media page 10, 20, 30 times a day, unable to sleep, constant anxiety, to realizing that she hadn't thought about him in weeks, to realizing that she was so busy rebuilding her own life, creating a vision of what she actually wanted and going after it regularly, daily, that she just didn't have time to be worried about some loser that broke her heart. If you're one of the people that watched or listened all the way to the end, feel free to message me or leave a comment just sharing your biggest challenge in moving on. I read all of them. I incorporate them. I know I'm not always the best at directly responding. And if you want my personal help, feel free to book a call with me. The link should be somewhere pretty easy to find. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And remember that their betrayal revealed who they are, not who you are.